After a sniper's bullet struck his Gladiator's engine, novice pilot Pat Pattle braced to crash land into the rebel-infested desert below. His biplane slammed into the sand hard, burying its nose deep and sending Pattle's head smashing into the dashboard. Disoriented, the RAF pilot stumbled out of his wrecked plane. Miraculously, a small unit from the Scottish Black Watch Regiment came to his rescue. Yet the pilot and the Scottish warriors were not yet out of the woods. As they made their way back to Jerusalem, they were cut off and ambushed by insurgents. Surrounded and outnumbered, this seemed like the end of Pattle and his dreams of becoming a legendary pilot. At that moment, he remembered he was not just any RAF pilot. He was South African, and he would not be taken alive. He grabbed a rifle, and shouting Zulu war cries, he led the Black Watch in a defiant bayonet charge. Not all soldiers could say they honed their marksman skills, hunting lions and gazelles in the savannah, but young Marmaduke Thomas St. John Pattle had become a remarkable shooter precisely that way in his home country of South Africa. Still, being a good shot was not enough for Pattle. He dreamed of becoming a remarkable fighter pilot. However, those dreams came crashing down when, in 1933, the tiny South African Air Force rejected his application to join its ranks. 3 years later, by mere chance, Pattle spotted an ad in the local newspaper requesting short service commissions in the RAF. There was a catch, however. He had to pay for his own trip to England. It took the entirety of his savings, but Pattle was not throwing this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity away, and by late June, he was undergoing basic flight training at Royal Air Force Station Prestwick, Scotland. He was immediately recognized as a superb marksman, and after just a few months of flying, he made a reputation as a brilliant and resourceful pilot. He joined the elite No. 80 Fighter Squadron and was shipped to Egypt in April 1938. Pattle and his squadron provided ground troops with air cover as they protected the precious Suez Canal. The Italian military was growing in the region. The number of airfields in Libya had increased drastically, and everything seemed to suggest RAF pilots would soon be clashing against Italian airmen over the Suez Canal for control of North Africa. Before that could happen, however, No. 80 Squadron had to deal with the constant attacks of local insurgents. Spread into numerous tribes across the vast swaths of desert, dealing with these rebels was not a simple task. To make matters more complicated, many of them were as capable marksmen as Pattle. They had been trained on deflection shooting by Lawrence of Arabia during World War I. The technique allowed them to predict the speed and direction of a moving object and shoot ahead at their target. As such, not even RAF Gladiators, flying at 258 miles per hour, were safe from rebel riflemen. In April 1938, Pattle became the victim of one of these deft snipers. One well-timed shot lodged a bullet right in the engine of his warplane, and he began to lose fuel fast. His engine stopped. He was losing his altitude quickly. He would have to crash land in the middle of the desert. The rebels would surely find him, but that was a problem for the near future. Right now, he needed to survive the landing. Sand filled Pattle's mouth as the biplane tumbled across the desert. The impact drove his head into the instrument panel, leaving him dazed in a haze of pain and fumes. Blood ran down his temple as he pulled himself out of the wreckage, hands shaking as he keyed his radio coordinates. The Black Watch found him, barely conscious, under the brutal sun. But the rescue didn't last. Rifle shots broke the desert silence, insurgents emerging from the dunes, their bullets kicking up the sand around the convoy. Trapped and wounded, miles from Jerusalem, Pattle felt a strange calm take over. There was only one choice left. His grandfather's stories of epic Zulu battles of old echoed in his mind. Grabbing a rifle, he let out a cry. The Scottish soldiers hesitated for a moment, then joined him. Together, they charged, bayonets ready, into the ambush. For a moment, Pattle was certain that this was the end. But then something incredible happened. The rebels looked at each other, took a hesitant step back, and began to flee. Pattle had managed to overcome an impossible situation, and now he was ready to take that experience into the air. Action found the No. 80 Squadron soon after June 10, 1940, when Italy joined the war Germany had started a few months earlier. On August 4th, Pattle led his gladiators across enemy lines. 30 miles into hostile territory, a flare burst from the Lysander they were escorting, the distress signal that made every pilot's blood run cold. Pattle and wingmen John Lancaster and Kenneth Rue dove toward the threat, squinting against the glare. The enemy was elusive at first, but flight leader Peter Wickham Barnes spotted them, a formation of Breda BA-65s heading home after attacking a British convoy, with Fiat escorts circling above. The battle erupted. Wickham Barnes struck first, sending a Breda down in smoke and flames. The Italians fought back. Rue never saw the CR-32 that took him down. Lancaster took a hit, an explosive round tearing into his arm. Despite his injury, he somehow managed to get his damaged Gladiator back, using his knees to control the throttle while desperately trying to stop the bleeding. Pattle cursed when he realized both of his guns were jammed. He kept fighting, maneuvering his Gladiator and continuing to try his guns until one of them dislodged, and he caught a Breda with a short but lethal burst of 7.7mm fire. The Italian plane hit the desert floor. When the Fiats joined in, Wickham Barnes claimed another victory, before his damaged Gladiator forced him to bail out. The arrival of the 11th Hussars armored cars saved him from the desert. 10 miles from El Adem, Pattle found himself all alone, fending off against uncountable enemy warplanes. Out of the sun, 5 CR-42s dove at him from every angle. Acting on instinct, he snapped his Gladiator around, catching one Fiat in a deflection shot. The Italian fighter disintegrated in a satisfying explosion, but another of Pattle's guns seized up, leaving him nearly defenseless. Realizing he was in real trouble, Pattle turned for home. The sky, however, was filled with Italian aircraft, a dozen CR-42s and 3 Bredas, and they were not too happy with Pattle's plan to leave the party early. They began a relentless pursuit. The fight turned desperate as the South African pilot's last gun ran empty. Bullets tore into his Gladiator, damaging the rudder controls. He had no choice but to bail out. The desert night swallowed him after he parachuted down. Each step through the sand felt like progress toward safety, toward Egypt, until dawn's light revealed his mistake. He'd been walking deeper into Libya. Thirst burning his throat, he turned back, eventually collapsing beside a desert track. An officer from the 11th Hussars found him dust-covered and half delirious. With a mix of gallows humor and calm, the Brit looked down from his vehicle and asked, quote, "Are you doing this for fun, or would you like a lift?" Pattle would later say he'd never heard sweeter words. After several heated aerial skirmishes, 88th Squadron left Egypt for Greece. Their mission was to bolster the small Greek air force, which had fought bravely on the Albanian front since the Italian invasion of Greece on October 28th. On November 19th, the squadron flew its first mission into Albania, 4 days after a successful Greek counterattack pushed the Italians 60 kilometers back across the border. Engaging Italian fighters near Karitsa, the Gladiator pilots claimed 9 victories, with Pattle himself downing 2 CR-42s, achieving his 5th and 6th victories. He was now officially an ace, but he wasn't done yet. On December 2nd, while flying from Yanina, Pattle shot down 2 RO-37 aircraft. 2 days later, he downed 3 CR-42s. 2 weeks later, Pattle shot down an SM-79 and an SM-81. The next day, he brought down a CR-42 during a particularly brutal dogfight over the Albanian front. The Italian fighters managed to orchestrate a coordinated attack against Pattle's squadron. Squadron leader William Hickey's warplane was caught in the middle of the bullet storm, and he was forced to back out. Tragically, his parachute caught fire as he tried to make it to the ground, and he lost his life. Squadron leader Edward Tap Jones took command and led an offensive patrol into the Tepelin area on February 9th. A new series of dogfights took place, with Pattle destroying a CR-42. When he returned, he learned he had earned a Distinguished Flying Cross for his previous exploits, with the citation noting, quote, "He has been absolutely fearless and undeterred by superior numbers of the enemy." In the following days, Pattle claimed to have shot down a Z-1007 and another Fiat in what were to be his last flights in a Gladiator. Shortly afterward, hurricanes arrived, and Pattle was given command of a detached flight based at Paramithia. Most Allied pilots in Europe had been flying modern monoplanes for months, but fighters in the Mediterranean theater were often left for last. Still, Pattle now had access to a state-of-the-art, all-metal monoplane that was almost 100 miles per hour faster than his Gladiator, and he intended to get the most out of it. Although they missed the Gladiator's aerobatic capabilities, the pilots quickly adapted to their new Hurricanes. On February 20th, they escorted bombers on a raid against the Italian base at Berat. When Fiat G-50s attacked, Pattle led his flight to intercept, shooting down the lead aircraft. A Blenheim gunner described the action, quote, "A G-50 came for us, and in a flash, a Hurricane shot it off our wingtip. It was a wizard." On February 28th, 8 Hurricanes and 19 Gladiators engaged in a large dogfight over Albania, resulting in the RAF claiming 27 victories. Pattle accounted for 2 CR-42s and 2 BR-20s, bringing his personal score to over 20. Pattle's successes boosted 88th Squadron's reputation, and the RAF was shredding through the Regia Aeronautica in the skies over Greece. Hitler was not one bit happy about these developments and considered intervening in the front. On April 6th, the Germans invaded Greece from Bulgaria and Yugoslavia. By this time, Pattle was already the commander of the 33rd Squadron. That day, his Hurricanes finally clashed against the legendary Luftwaffe. In the arterial Rappel Pass, Pattle and his flyboys demonstrated the Germans were as human as them, and they engaged a formation of 20 Me-109s. The RAF pilots swiftly brought down 5 German warplanes without any losses, dissolving the almost mythical status held by the Luftwaffe pilots. Pattle's wingman later said, quote, "I never had a chance. We came up right behind this pair of 109s. Pat gave them a left and a right, and it was all over. Both went down in flames." The war turned chaotic. While the RAF was doing splendidly, the ground Greek and British forces were crushed under the might of the Wehrmacht. In days, the German army pushed the Allied forces out of most of Greece in a humiliating blow, reminiscent of the fall of France. During this erratic period, Pattle became severely ill with influenza, yet he continued to fight. From April 7th to 12th, Pattle destroyed several enemy planes, including Do-17s, Ju-88s, HE-111s, and Me-109s. Ignoring the advice from military doctors, the South African continued to lead his usual high number of sorties. He lay feverish on a couch between missions, drenched in sweat beneath a heap of blankets. Despite his condition, during this period, he reportedly downed 3 Do-17s, a Ju-88, an HE-111, an Me-109, an Me-110, and an SM-79. On April 14th, he claimed 2 more Ju-88s, along with an Me-109, an Me-110, and another SM-79. When Flying Officer Roald Dahl joined 80th Squadron, he met a tired and ghoulish Pattle, who he described as, quote, "a cat who knew that all of its 9 lives had been used up." On April 20th, despite his worsening condition, Pattle took off again to defend Allied shipping. After destroying a Ju-88 and saving Flight Lieutenant William Timber Woods from an Me-110 ambush, Pattle was shot down over Eleusis Bay. He did not survive the attack. Whether it was his fever or sheer exhaustion that led to his end remains uncertain. But one thing is clear. One of the greatest combat aviation records had come to an end. Pattle's exact tally may never be known. The chaos of the Greek campaign led to the loss of official records, but unofficial sources suggest he destroyed at least 44 enemy aircraft, possibly as many as 50. Despite potentially being the RAF's top ace, Pattle remains largely unknown, overshadowed by what history considers a sideshow theater of war.